I think we're going to see, well, I just know my crystal ball or my economic forecast show that we're probably going to see, every market's going to see probably a 10 to 40% reduction in values over the next 12 to 24 months. Values are going to drop based on wages, defaults, interest rates, stuff like that.
Welcome to the Peak Profits Podcast, your guide to maximizing returns in passive real estate investing. Hosted by Brian Morris and Chris Ward of 7 Peak Capital, we dive into conversations with industry experts, sharing insights, strategies, and stories to elevate your investment portfolio. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, this podcast is designed to give you the edge for financial freedom. Get ready to unlock new opportunities, discover the secrets of successful investing, and take your passive real estate investments to the next level. Let's get started and reach those peak profits together.
Welcome back to the Peak Profits Podcast. Today's guest is Scott Carson, President and CEO of We Close Notes, host of the top-rated Note Closer Show podcast, and one of the most recognized educators in the debt buying and note investing space. Scott has been in the mortgage and finance industry since 2001 and actively investing in real estate since 2002. Since 2005, he's built his business by buying distressed residential and commercial notes and helping thousands of investors do the same through his classes, podcasts, and coaching programs. Scott, we're pumped to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Man, I am honored to be here with you guys and here to deliver peak results to the Peak Profits Podcast. Trying to say that 3 times fast. The PPP. Hey, you down with PPP? Yeah, you know me.
I love it. I love the energy. I'm excited to get on and deliver some peak results to the listeners today about note investing and what you focus on. So could you elaborate a little bit more on what I opened up with? You've been in the industry for some time now. So maybe bring us back to the beginning on how you got started.
Well, can I do one thing and define what note investing is, and then I can go back to my journey as a young, growing up as a young black man on a dirt floor or whatever like that. But
Yeah.
no, I'm a note investor, and I do it a little bit differently. I actually buy distressed mortgage debt from banks and hedge funds. So when people think of note investing, they think about people kind of, buying on terms or selling a property with owner financing, and that's one niche of note investing. I just am kind of the big short side of the business, where we're literally looking at portfolios of residential commercial mortgages backed by real estate, and we buy that stuff. And my journey into kind of getting into that space is kind of a unique aspect. I mean, like many people, I started off as a real estate investor back in 2001, bought my first house, bought my 2 first investment properties that were going to be rentals, and then proceeded to lose my job along with my 2 tenants, and I was a distressed borrower. I was facing foreclosure like many folks back in the day. Able to get out of that, dust myself off, work for a little while, take a little siesta from the wannabe investor side of things, and went back into work. And then met a couple of real estate investors that were traveling the country, teaching creative financing, owner financing, note buying, stuff like that. In 2004, surprisingly, it's been 21 days since I gave my notice at my last official W-2 job this week, basically, which is kind of funny. And decided to go join them doing mortgages. And for 4 years, I basically had an apprenticeship learning about creative financing, real estate investing, as they were traveling the country, teaching all these workshops and speaking. And I was kind of the mortgage guy in the back of the room, but also just got to really be a sponge and soak it all in. So I started buying debt besides originating debt. And when everything hit the fan here in the States in 2008, right was a wall. I sold my part of a mortgage company for $1 because that was about all it was worth. And then started just dialing for dollars. Instead of originating notes, I was de-originating notes and calling banks and lenders to see what kind of portfolios or tapes, as we call it, which is basically spreadsheets of their bad notes, or as I call them, naughty notes, with the goal in mind to buy this debt at a big discount, which is what we do, and then working to rehab the borrowers versus rehab the properties. And now fast forward, we've bought over, I think we're coming up on a couple $1 billion in distressed debt on residential and commercial assets, all types of assets. From anywhere from a $7 note in Baltimore, Maryland, I bought for $7, flipped it for $5,000, all the way up to 386 notes at one time from a major bank. So yeah, it's never a dull day in my line of work. Before I got on with you guys, I was actually making offers on 30 non-performing notes in 12 different states just a second ago.
That's amazing, Scott. So for people who have either never heard of what is a non-performing note, it's something they may have heard of, but have never looked into in much detail. Can you walk us through the process of identifying a non-performing note right all the way to the beginning, the start of what you're doing? You mentioned there just before this you were dialing for dollars, so the hustle is still there. But you obviously have some processes that you follow. You have some tips and tricks that you can probably share with those people that are looking to do something similar.
Yeah, so there people like to chase like foreclosure. So a lot of people are in the fix and flip business and they want to chase distressed assets, but they're approaching it from the property side. Well, almost all of these distressed properties that are facing foreclosure or going to foreclosure auction, stuff like that, there is a mortgage tied to it. So I approach things from that aspect is instead of going after the borrowers, the foreclosure list, I literally target banks and lending institutions by getting to the right department. It's not calling customer service. You're contacting like the special asset manager or the home loan trading department, which is an internal department of these banks. But these banks are all reviewing their portfolio on a regular basis and wanting to offload this non-performing debt most of the time. It's a little bit different depending on what's going on with that bank. But these lenders out there, when you look at the United States, has about 80 million homes with a mortgage on it, and we're running at about a 3 to 4% default rate every month. That's about 3 to 4 million mortgages or borrowers in default who are facing foreclosure where they haven't paid in anywhere from 6 months to 6 years. So when we reach out to these banks and lenders, they send us a spreadsheet. It's got addresses, borrowers' names, the payment stream, the details of the mortgage. And they tell us, okay, is this how far behind it is. And a non-performing note is exactly as it says, or as it sounds. It's somebody who hasn't paid in a while. A performing note is somebody who's paying on time. Performing means they're kind of paying 2 months here, miss a payment, make a triple payment, miss a couple months, make a payment here and there. So non-performing, I always like that because I can buy those at usually bigger discounts off of what's owed. And while a lot of investors like to chase equity, I create my technical equity because I'm buying that mortgage at a huge discount off of what's owed or below the value of the property. Now, my number one thing is not actually to own the property. I don't necessarily want to own real estate in 30 different states. I like being the bank and owning the actual debt and the cash flow aspect of things. And that's why I joked about rehabbing the borrower. Because if somebody hasn't paid their mortgage in 6 years, you're probably not going to get them back on track. You're probably going to have to foreclose, which happens about 30% of the time. But if somebody hasn't paid in the last 2 years or the last 12 months, based on what the lender provides us or the bank provides us, they'll give us all sorts of due diligence. They'll give us the servicing notes. They'll tell us, provide copies of the collateral file. Like I have one right here. This is kind of what I'm buying. This secures a $150,000 house in Kankakee, Illinois that I bought back in the day for $25,000. Okay. And it took me 9 months to work it out with the bar to get them back on track. Unfortunately, they didn't stay on track. So we ended up foreclosing because we, as the lender, which is what we become when we buy the note, not the property owner, we become the lender, and we can go through the same legal right to foreclose like any bank could. So we get these lists in, and it's just like looking at, okay, what's the value? What kind of condition is it in? What's the likelihood we think the borrower could reperform versus foreclosing? What is the notes that if the borrower's called in and been really nice, hey, I'm trying to do something that we'd like that, but say Chris calls the bank and tells us to go pound sand, we know we're going to probably have to foreclose on Chris at that point. Brian calls it, oh, please don't foreclose. I lost my job. Give me 6 months to get back on track. We like those kind of people. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, not everybody can perform. And like I said, we're able to get people back in track about 70% of the time. The other 30% we foreclose. And that's really where we make the lion's share of our money is, okay, simple math. So let's say somebody has a house and it's at a $200,000 value, and they got a $210,000 mortgage on it now because they're upside down or values have dropped a little bit, right? And they got like a 6% mortgage, okay? Well, if I buy that note and they haven't paid in a year or whatever, and I buy that note at 50 cents on the dollar, and I reach out to Chris and say, hey, what happened? He's like, oh, well, I lost my job, but I can start paying now. I just can't pay the full year that I'm behind on. Okay, we'll work with you because I'm buying at 100. I can be a lot more flexible with Chris than being the original bank. So if I can get Chris to start paying just his normal mortgage payment on time, which is a 6% mortgage, but I bought it at 50 cents, that's a 12% cash and cash return right off the bat to us. Okay. And cash flow is nice. I don't have to rehab the property. I don't deal with toilet stands and trash outs. You know what I mean? Nobody calls me when the little Timmy, flushes the toilet flushes the rubber ducky down the toilet, you know what I mean? Or the AC goes out, or whatever, which is nice. I like being in the bank. I like to sleep. What's great is we buy these non-performing notes at such discounts that if we can get the borrowers back on track for a period of time of 12 months, it's reclassified now as performing again. All right. And here's the thing. There are third-party servicing companies that handle the collections. They handle the borrower outreach. So all I have to do is answer a few emails or talk to my servicing company. I don't have to go out and talk to all the borrowers. That's too much drama. I don't need that drama. You know what I mean? Let the professionals handle it. And if they don't pay, then we just kick it to our attorneys who foreclose, and you have to have an attorney in every state. That's okay. But after 12 months of on-time payments, and Chris has been good, that's now considered reperforming or performing. I can turn around and sell that mortgage back to Wall Street or other investors at 80, 90 cents on the dollar. So now I got a year cash flow. I got maybe a little bit of skin extra from Chris, maybe 3 or 4 months of payments to, incentivize him to stay. And I bought it at 100. Well, now I'm turning around and selling it at 160, 170 back to Wall Street. I made, 90 grand on a deal that I only held for 12 months and never really owned the property. And that's what we try to do. We'll hold it for cash flow, obviously, but sometimes we sell. Of course, if they don't pay, so I bought it at 100 and Chris doesn't pay, I have the right to foreclose. And that may cost me $1,000 if it's here in Texas where I'm located, or it might cost me, say, $5,000 if it's in God's radio in Florida. Unfortunately, I don't buy up where Brian's living in New York City because it takes 3 years to foreclose up there and is not lender friendly at all. So I don't buy in the Big Apple or your favorite, fresh smelling air neighbor, New Jersey either as well, because it takes 2 years to foreclose there.
That was
a lot there. Sorry.
No, that was very detailed and very good and easy to follow, which I appreciate. And you explained it well, right? You kept it at a level where you can kind of visualize how you're going through the process, talking to the asset manager of the bank and getting these lists. And, it sounds like a lot of work on your end, and I'm sure you have a team, that works with you that, helps you sift through the opportunities. But so now let's go back to that $200,000 hypothetical example, right? You find that this might be a good note to buy. What is that process like with the bank? You tell them, hey, I want to buy this note. Do you have to contact the seller? How does it transfer from the bank to, like, now you own it, and how are you collecting that next month's mortgage payment? Right. So those are some of the thoughts that came up in my mind.
Yeah, I love it when you have thoughts. It's always a good thing when we're thinking here and answer those questions. Because
sometimes, not all the
time. You know what I mean? Yeah, me too, man. I don't know. Like between 3 and 5, I'm out. But anyway, so with most mortgage companies, there's going to be a servicing company already attached to it who's doing the borrower outreach. They're collecting the payments. So when I get a spreadsheet, it's going to give me what the bank kind of values that asset is for, like a BPO value, broker price opinion, what they think about. Of course, a lot of it's done is just Zillow values. They have these big portfolios, and they'll tell me what their estimated legal balance is. And so I'll make an offer knowing that I'll have a week to 30 days to do deeper due diligence on that asset and that loan file if my offer is accepted. So like I just submitted these bids literally 30 minutes ago. It only took me about 20 minutes to go through 187 assets because you just run some formulas. They tell you the P&I payment, and they tell you what the balance is, and they tell you if it's non-performing. I know I'm gonna make a lower ball offer versus if it's performing, right? So I just run some formulas in there, calculate, okay, what did they pay the last 12 months versus what they should have paid? If they haven't paid anything, what's it gonna cost me to foreclose in that state, give or take a little bit? So I can run some formulas pretty easy. We're developing an AI model to be able to upload a spreadsheet and it spit back some stuff as well. But I always like to take a look at it. So we submit our offer. If the bank accepts our offer, then we enter the due diligence period. Then we're going to order a BPO, a broker price opinion, an external appraisal, basically, because we can't get into these properties because people are living in it. So we'll pay $85 to $100 for a realtor to go out, pull some photos, give us condition reports of the exterior. We'll order a title update, not a title report, to see what other liens are outstanding on the property that are junior to ours, or if there's anything senior that we can't wipe out. We'll also look at the collateral file. We'll review these files, make sure all the documents are in it that we have the right to foreclose. If the note's been sold a few times, we're going to make sure all the transfer docs line up. So it's not difficult once you've done one. You always learn more by doing your first deal. But if that checks out, then we're wiring money directly into the bank. You need cash. You can't go get you can get lines of credit and stuff, but you can't go get like a hard money loan to buy it. No, you've either got to have cash or use OPM, other people's money. We use a lot of self-directed IRA funds from people. Passively, we're paying them a 7 to 10% return on their money for 24 to 36 months, and it's a win-win. But once we wire the funds, it's about a 2-week to 30-day period for the actual transfer to happen, where you've got according to fair debt collection practices, you've got to give the borrower time to respond. So the lender, the previous lender will send out what's called a goodbye letter, like, hey, thanks for not paying us, Chris. Now you cannot pay Brian here at this address. Our servicing company, if we're using a new one, will send out what's called a hello letter. Hey, thanks for not paying. Now you have to pay us at this address. So that takes about 30 days. And so what we do is once that servicing kicks in place, we've already sent our own letter like, hey, we know that you haven't paid. We know you're behind. What's the issue? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? Because if you know pay, you know stay, right? And so we'll send out, depending on what we look at and what we find along the way, like, are they behind in taxes? Or is the utilities on? Is it occupied or vacant asset? We'll send them 3 or 4 solutions. One will be to, hey, just start paying on time again. One might be to modify it if they haven't already modified the loan. One might be a cash for keys or a deed in lieu, like a friendly foreclosure where they can just walk away, and we'll forgive them that debt. Another one might be, hey, you got some equity, let's help you sell the property, or if you're upside down, let's do a short sale, or just, if they don't respond to any of those, then we know that they haven't responded in like 2 weeks or 30 days. We know to just give it to the attorney and say, hey, release the hounds, start the foreclosure process. Yeah, if the previous lender hadn't already started that, So a lot of times we'll just take over existing counsel, and they'll go ahead and finish the foreclosure off. Like I got one we bought that it goes to foreclosure in 4 months, and we bought it at a big discount. The bank just wanted that 50 grand on that deal now versus waiting 4 months. Because it's taken them about 1.5 years to get through the whole foreclosure process, and they rather get the money now versus wait around for 4 months.
So when you're going to the banks, are you going to kind of like more local banks? Are you going to national banks, or are you really trying to focus on those local banks? I saw you nodding your head as soon as I said local.
Well, it's good. This is a great. I love this question because it's funny. Somebody called me the other day. Well, Scott, I walked into my Wells Fargo bank and they wouldn't sell me notes. I'm like, well, yeah, jackass. They don't know you from Adam. You're not going to walk into a Bank of America, Chase, or Citibank, or Wells Fargo and just say, hey, I want to buy notes. Those bankers don't even know what the heck you're talking about. I mean, I used to be a banker. I'm like, what are you talking about? We don't sell our notes. Well, every bank sells it, but some of them, like those bigger top 10 banks, they're not going to sell a one-off note. They're going to sell like a $50 to $100 million tranche, a big pool to, JP Morgan, somebody else. But there's still plenty of opportunities on those mid-sized regional banks is where we see a lot of the better deals in a lot of cases, or even the smaller banks, like the one single branch in a little small city, they're too tight on their deposits and relationship to sell a note at a big discount. So you want to find a bank or lender that's in a couple states with a couple branches or more. We usually target banks that have 5 or more branches up to those bigger guys and target them on LinkedIn or we've been doing that for a while, so we've got a pretty good list. We're just doing email, a drip marketing campaign to them, or you can jump on like LinkedIn and do a search for like by job titles, like special asset manager, secondary marketing, whole loan trader for some of the big REITs and insurance companies that'll sell stuff off, and go from there. You could also, what's nice is it's a much smaller niche of people doing this than say wholesalers or fix and flippers or landlords or Airbnbs or all the apartment syndicators out there crying in their milk right now with the market being like it is. But, you can buy commercial debt as well. When I first started, I bought a lot of multifamily debt at big discounts. And we go through that. And every state's a little bit different on the foreclosure time frame compared to each other. So you got to keep that in mind a little bit. That makes sense.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, but you need to buy the note in full cash. So you just need to wire them. For example, you said you have a $50,000 note that you just purchased that has 4 months left on foreclosure. So you wired that bank $50,000 for that note that they agreed to pay you for $50,000 to sell you for $50,000, and now that house might be worth $100.
Worth $120. It's worth $120.
$120. Very nice.
The borrower owes $140 on it. They're upside down. Hadn't made a payment in 2.5 years, right? And their monthly mortgage payment is $855 a month. So if they pay $855 a month, if I can get back on track for $855 a month, that's what just under 10 grand a year. 10 grand on a $50,000 investment. That's a pretty good ROI right off the bat.
Yeah, damn right.
If they don't play ball, then we foreclose in 4 months and either sell it at the auction, which I'll make my offering at the auction through my attorney and say, hey, just try to sell it at 85, 90% or see how bidding goes. If it sells to the auction, great. we're done with it. If it doesn't sell and we take it back, now we own the real estate. We could fix it up and sell it. You could owner finance it, turn it a rental. I usually just like to fix them up and get them moved as best we can. Some people want to hold on to that stuff, and that's completely fine. But when you're buying in 20, 30 states, I usually only want to hold real estate in one or two states that I'm familiar with, you know what I mean? Or live,
Sure.
like in Texas.
And I'd imagine maybe, do you work with wholesalers that, like, if you buy the note that doesn't perform, you end up taking a foreclosure, and then, you have that house for 50,000 and, it might be worth 120, and someone comes in and says, "Hey, I'll give you 80K now," and you make 30K on your money quick. Is that something that you do and work
Yep.
with, or is that not?
Totally depending on the rehabs. If there's a bar in place, we have to evict them and then go there and see what kind of condition it's in. Yeah, we'll work with wholesalers. We'll work with realtors to list it and get it going. I mean, realtors are a key core routine because if we're buying notes, we're usually sending a realtor out to kind of get an idea of the value and condition of the property. We sent a realtor out to one today in Pennsylvania where the bar hadn't responded and knock on the door and deliver like, "Hey, do you want to stay or do you want to go? What's going on? We're getting ready to foreclose in a couple weeks." So to get a feel, and they're also familiar so that if we do take the asset back, they can immediately start marketing that property, via photos, changing the locks, and having an idea what kind of repairs we need to do so we can speed up, the velocity of capital that people like to say to get things moving.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So I just had an additional question to follow up on that. And it's it seems like a pretty complex process, right? With how you build out your systems. And I'm sure you've been doing this for a long time. So you have a system in place where you're able to look at 186 loans 30 minutes ago and determine, maybe I'll buy these, maybe I won't. So you help thousands of investors, and you do so by coaching as well. How does someone get into this industry if they're just getting started, right? And then
Great
they want to
question.
buy their first note.
Yeah, by their first note, I mean, just start looking at notes. It's like anything else. I mean, yes, it seems complicated, but the first rehab you ever did was complicated, right? The first wholesale it seemed like it was like trying to read Hebrew. You know what I mean? To get everything done. And so that's the thing. There's some laws and rules that you go by. You never buy a note you don't want to end up owning the property on. That's the first thing, right? If you want to get stuff cash flowing, you buy stuff that's occupied versus vacant. If you want to do more rehabs, then you buy more stuff that's vacant for sure. So there's some different rules and stuff like that. I always say like pick 1, 2, or 3 states. And if you're in some states like Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, there's a lot of opportunity there to take a look at. If you can start local, great. If you're in God's waiting room, Florida, plenty of negative stuff down there right now. If you're in Texas, the Lone Star State, you want to make sure it hasn't flooded or hasn't been hit by a hurricane and other things to look at. So it's just like any other market, get to know what's going on in that market. And then that's why you send somebody out to always view an asset and see what it looks like in the condition. We had a guy that bought a note sight unseen. And I'm like, why did you do that? Well, the numbers seem good. He owed 30. I could buy it for 18. I'm like, where the hell is it at? Oh, it's in some podunk town in Pennsylvania. I'm like, okay, do you want to own the asset? Not really. Then why the hell did you buy it? You know what I mean? Stupid is as stupid does sometimes. But that's why people, I had started teaching classes and workshops because I was getting all these lists in like from Capital One and US Bank, and I could understand it. I could see the matrix code of the deals and where it was from. And you just had to start teaching people how to think differently. Looking at the numbers as a debt buyer is different than looking at the properties of fix and flipper. So it's just understanding the niche. But there are platforms out there that you can go buy individual notes off of right now that you can actually go and target foreclosure lists and contact the attorneys, the lenders directly in foreclosure lists. There's some platforms like exchange.loans, auction.com. You sell a lot of notes, paper stack. There's a few others out there. You don't have to buy a big pool of like 200 or 187. You could buy one, and start off learning the process with one note. I mean, using your self-directed IRA to fund the deal if you want, or use somebody else's IRA to partner with them and pay them a flat percentage, and just go through the process. It's what I like about it is there's always inventory. I mean, one of the hardest things that most real estate investors do is all about finding deals, and they spend so much money on direct mail or driving for dollars or lists or pay-per-click to get people to click on things. We don't pay any money on leads because once you've made contact with a bank and they have a list, they will usually send you their list once a week or once a month. If something's not on this list this month, well, you wait until next month. Or you contact or you have a list of note buyers and say, hey, I'll wholesale flip you this note on this list that I don't want to buy it, but I could make 5, 10, 100 grand on the deal, depending on what type of deal it is. And so you can wholesale notes just like you can in real estate. So that's usually where a lot of people want to get their feet wet is, hey, let me flip a note or two, get a feel for it, or buy a small one. and get the ball rocking and rolling. And it's very possible. We just had a CPA. His name is Sterling out of Portland, Oregon. He bought his first note for $8,500 on this little property in Mayo, Florida. The borrower owed, he owed 60. The house was worth about 50. And he bought the note, like I said, cheap at $8,500 with his IRA. But the borrower, first phone call from the new servicing company, the guy was willing to start paying $500 a month to get back on track. And he brought $4,000 to the table. So Sterling's investment's going to be a phenomenal return his first 12 months. And then after that, it's going to be about a 35% cash and cash return for the next 9 years until the borrower pays off. And then if he doesn't pay, then he forecloses and now owns the property in Mayo, Florida.
Wow. So you've talked through the process. You've mentioned this a few times, like you always have somebody go and check the property. Like in terms of risks, I feel like the condition of the property has to be one of the biggest risks because you can only see the external side of the property. That is really only not even one half necessarily of the puzzle, right? Like, what about the inside? What about if there's any issues with the foundation or like really the entire house?
Right.
Like, so
Yeah,
how do you manage that risk, and what other risks are there associated with notes? Because again, there's always the upside, the 30% IRR, that right, like all of that, but there are obviously risks associated with every investment as well.
Yep. There are a lot of honey holes tightening up there, Chris, as you're talking about that stuff. And it's so true. People are like, oh my God, you can't see inside the house. I can't make an offer. So here's the thing you got to realize. If somebody's living inside the property, 9 times out of 10, they're taking care of the interior of the property. You know you're going to have to replace paint and carpet and probably appliances. All right. So that's pretty much a given. The great thing about it is a little thing called insurance or forced place insurance. When we buy a note, we can only look at things that we can see, the roof, the exterior, stuff like that. And when we buy a note, we put forced place insurance. So if something pops up, like we open it up and it's a hoarder living in there and there's black mold everywhere, guess what? We're going to file a claim with a forced place insurance to cover our asses. That's going to take care of us. Okay. So insurance is a big thing. If the borrower has insurance on the property, that's great. If they don't, we'll buy it ourselves. And that way it protects. I mean, I've bought stuff. I bought a small 10-unit apartment complex in Chicago a few years back that had 4 retail units. And from the exterior, it looked nice. Well, when I got inside of it, all 10 of the units were just shit shows. Like one borrower had a hole in his ceiling in the tub, which was dripping sewage into his tub from the unit above. One person left their hot water running in their bathroom the entire time with a pair of pliers. I mean, we couldn't see this stuff, right? Thank God for insurance. You know what I mean? That covered our butts on that stuff. As far as other risks involved, like not looking at your property, not sending somebody out to make sure it's still there. People that buy in Louisiana or Houston, a few years back, a guy sent a realtor out to look at it and didn't verify address, didn't verify the actual street number on it, and thought it was this pretty house versus a slab next to it. And so that's the thing. You just got to verify addresses like you would with anything, and always using like you can pay $85 to $125 for a BPO agent to go out anywhere in the country and send you back a report. If it doesn't show the street address or I don't have all 3-4 sides of the house, I'm sending them back out. So, and that's also too, since we're buying at a discount, it kind of gives us a little bit of factor. Okay, we got to replace, a fridge or appliances. That's going to be $4 to $5,000 depending on where it's located. So that's why buying at a deep discount is good. That's why I also like buying occupied properties, because it's usually in better shape than something that's been sitting vacant for a while. If it's vacant, first and foremost, I can peek in the windows and usually not get shot at. You know what I mean? If it's a HUD mortgage note, usually they've got a lockbox. We may be able to get into that because we do buy reverse mortgages. So sometimes we will get inside. If it's been listed for sale, we'll often maybe see online photos from the current listing and stuff like that. So it all comes with, understanding your risk tolerances with anything else. Don't buy something you're going to end up rehabbing that's, 1,000 or 2,000 miles away. Pick something that I always tell folks, like, pick something that you'd probably get reperforming and get the feel for it first before you dive into the foreclosure side of things or looking at something you can't see. I mean, we all know, like, I'll give you an example. We were looking at this property in Spring, Texas about a year ago. And from the online photos, it looked pretty decent. It looked like it was a little outdated, but it was vacant. So the realtor came by to take a look at it, and the door looked locked. And then she went up and door opened up, and inside was the worst rat and roach infestation we've ever seen in a property, right? You just take a look at that. We didn't buy it,
Yeah.
thank goodness. But if I'd have walked around the back, you'd have seen the back doors kicked in and looked at this. That's why you always send somebody out to take a look at it, bar none. Is it vacant, occupied? I mean, the great thing about being the lender too, guys, is I can call or have somebody on my team call the actual county or the city utility department and say, hey, I represent the bank. Is water on? Is power on? Is gas on? If those things are on, somebody's usually taking care of the property. If those things are turned off, like, okay, when was it turned off? Oh, it's been off for like 12 months. Oh, okay. That's going to need some work, especially if it's up in Detroit, Michigan, where it's, cold a little bit of the time. So those are things you just learn, but it's like anything else. You start off one note nearby you kind of work through it and go from there. It's just like any other niche. You have people that are buying, you bet all these apartments indications people are like overpaying and thinking they could raise their rents. Well, there's a reason the rents were raised because they were all shithole, tenants or lifers, or they didn't want to let anybody in. And it just is different, So it's guys, one thing you always check is the taxes, make sure taxes have been paid or it's not going to tax sale. Looking at collateral file, making sure there's assignments. If there's an assignment of mortgage, which is what the transfer is, it's not a deed transfer, it's a assignment mortgage transfer gets filed, making sure that's filed or that's in a file folder, or making sure that there is this. You're not going to get this physical file until after closing, so you always want to make sure to look at the scan folders and see what's in the scan. If something's missing, just say, hey, I need a copy of this document that's missing from your file. If you don't have it, then I'm not going to fund. Or, hey, they tell you the value's 200 and your BPO comes back at 130. Well, I need to reduce or fade my bid. If they say no to it, well, great. I'm not going to buy it. So you can cancel your bids if something shows up in due diligence without being penalized or blacklisted. So that's the things that help alleviate some of the risks that others think they have going into it. You know what I mean?
Definitely some good learning points. And I'm sure over the years, you've probably seen so many different scenarios that you've learned from, that you've taken away different experiences so you can try to avoid in the future.
We had a deal in Dayton, Ohio. We bought a portfolio of notes of about 25 notes at one time. There's one in Dayton, Ohio, and nobody had heard from the borrower in 3 years. Why the existing lender hadn't foreclosed on it, I don't know. Ohio is about a 9-month foreclosure process. So we go over there, we find out it's, it looks like it's vacant, completely vacant. Nobody's responding. So as the bank, I have the right to protect my asset just like anything else. So my realtor went over to the locksmith, popped the locks to put a new lock on it, and she walked through the house and found that the borrower had died. He'd hung himself in his closet. You know what I mean? Nobody had known what was going on. There's just a skeleton basically enclosed in the closet at that point,
Yeah.
We bought a note one time where the borrower had been deceased, but his young son, who was dealing with had some mental issues, was living in the basement. And he was working at McDonald's, but he was coming home at night, defecating into garbage bags and peeing in a milk jug. So when we finally got into the house, down in the basement, there's like 100 milk containers of just urine. You know what I mean? It looked like something out of a Howard Hughes movie. You know what I mean? The Aviator, where, and then just all these bags of just shit and toilet paper wrapped up in, at least he wasn't just storing in the corner, he was storing in trash bags, but that was a little bit interesting. We bought another one that was a crack house. We had to strip that one all the way down. We would definitely filed a claim on that one. But yeah. The thing was, when you're buying notes from like banks, they usually have some sort of idea what's going on. You have people that will sell their owner finance note too as well. And that's something like that. But I always like buying direct from banks because it's cleaner paper most of the time. It's usually they've got all the documents they need. They've got some sort of servicing history, or at least some sort of communication history with the borrowers. We can tell, hey, do they stay? Do they want to go? If they want to stay and they can start paying through some sort of payment plan, hey, let's do it. Let's keep it. So I don't ever have to worry about the inside in some cases.
Yeah. And so that's some incredible scenarios that you've been through. And it's not surprising because I'm sure if you buy enough houses, you'd be shocked how some people are living or what's inside. But with that said, the market's been through a lot lately. What do you feel like the opportunity is in today's distressed environment, or kind of where we're at, I guess, within the last few years with the rise of rates and, where some banks are struggling with their balance sheets? Are you seeing more products at the market? Are you seeing more banks being willing to sell some of their portfolio? Where do you feel like we're at, and where do you kind of foresee the future, I guess, in the foreseeable future?
Great question. I just got my crystal ball in yesterday so I can answer this.
Yeah.
So
Tell me, and then I'll just
This part is going to be removed so we can go to Vegas. Okay.
Sick. I'll meet you there soon.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can. I see stuff 12 to 24 months of most real estate investors because we're seeing the debt side of things. And it's kind of a domino effect and delayed domino effect. Like Florida takes a year plus to foreclose in a lot of cases versus Texas takes 21 days, right? So stuff here happens faster. It's a little bit more expensive. But in Florida, stuff drags out. We start tracking defaults. And when you look at the default rates going up, people having a hard time paying, there's been some cracks in the system for the last 12 to 24 months, really since COVID. I mean, 1 out of 9 Americans is at least 30 days behind their mortgage if they have a mortgage. That's not a good thing. You look at the record number of defaults on credit card debt, student loan debt, auto loan debt being in high default rates. Those are all part of the house of cards when it comes to the American economy, when it comes to how we finance everything, right? There was an article out the other day too, well, it was about 6 months ago, talking about how 68 of the top 110 markets, it's more affordable to rent versus owning based on interest rates and everything and the cost of property, stuff like that. Well, that doesn't mean it's affordable. And also it's harder for people to buy a house or to stay in the house when they start going through these hiccups. I think we're going to see, well, I just know my crystal ball or my economic forecast show that we're probably going to see, every market's going to see probably a 10 to 40% reduction in values over the next 12 to 24 months. Values are going to drop based on wages, defaults, interest rates, stuff like that. Of course, if interest rates go up, it does not going to matter the existing that's been around for 3 or 5 years. You know what I mean? It's all about buying. I think Florida is set for another huge economic crash. I mean, the New York Times just labeled Cape Coral as the worst market in the country. These all sound doom and gloom. For me, I get excited because it's more distressed debt for me to buy at bigger discounts. So I bought back in Florida when it was 30% vacant back in the day. I used to buy condos on A1A and Miami Beach for like $5,000 a pop. It'd take us 2 years to go through the process of foreclosing and selling it. But I think there's a lot of opportunity if you know where to look, because people are always going to need houses. It's just that we have a bit of a big correction. Now, so, I don't mean to scare everybody saying like 10 to 40%, because some markets are just straight up overvalued right now. Like here in Austin, we've been overvalued for about 5 years. Last 12 months, we saw about a 5% correction, not a crash. My numbers show that we'll probably see a 10 to 15% drop in values just because, it's a correction more than a crash in a lot of cases. So each market's got its own things, but there's more people hurting every day with the job markets and all the other stuff that's going on. You're going to see more people struggling to pay their mortgage. That leads to more foreclosures, more debts, more bankruptcy filings as people try to find a way to say stuff. I mean, what's unfortunate, I think, if you map some of the other companies out there, like you map DoorDash or Uber, where people are high in those areas, I think you're going to see those areas hit the most because people are just trying to get by. I have a buddy that does a lot with, like, he's called the flea market flipper, where he goes to all these different things and flips, things at the flea market. It's kind of a garage sale economy. If you look back to what happened in 2010, 2011, the lead up to that, people were just living high in the hog, cashing out their equity and not using to invest, but to go buy toys. Well, if you go to any online classifieds now, since we don't read the paper anymore, and you start driving around your neighborhoods, you'll see more and more garage sales of people having to sell off the toys they once had to try to pay for their existing mortgage. So it's maybe a little bit doom and gloom. It'll vary a little bit state by state, city by city, obviously, but there's going to be a correction, and we're already seeing increased debt from banks and stuff like that, sending me more lists. And it's always interesting when banks start calling me to get pricing versus me call them for deals. You know what I mean? And we're seeing more of that.
That's really interesting. Glad you got your crystal ball out there for.
I can share the list with you. I mean, it's literally, I got it yesterday. I was like, oh shit. Well, okay. What's the timing for this? And, it's like with anything, you got to learn to pivot as an investor. Not everything works in every market. If you're just stuck in one zip code and things change in that market, you got to learn to pivot a little bit. Where you're at, Chris, there's a debt buyer's market in London and England and stuff like that, but they only allow like major institutions to trade in it. We're really unique here in the United States that we, just this old Dink from Ingleside, Texas can buy debt out there as well too,
So with that, Scott, like you've not just helped yourself and your family with this, you mentioned earlier, you've helped thousands of investors, and you've specifically mentioned self-directed IRAs, I think 2 or 3 times. Now, I've invested using my self-directed IRA. I think it's probably one of the worst kept secrets or best kept secrets. I don't know whether it's a good or a bad thing that it's a secret, but not a lot of people really know that they can leverage their self-directed IRAs to make investments. First of all, can you talk about how that works in the world of buying notes? How does somebody come to you if they've got a self-directed IRA and they're interested in potentially investing with you? Talk us through how that works in your world.
Yeah, so there's roughly about 50 to 60 different self-directed IRA custodians or trustees out there. And yes, if people say, "Oh, I have a self-directed IRA," yeah, but if it's with Schwab or AG Edwards or your bank, it's only self-directed to allow you to invest in the funds that that lending institution or that financial institution allows. The largest self-directed IRA custodian in the country here is Equity Trust. Quest Trust out of Texas is a bigger one. They've now changed or sold off to Advana. There's a bunch of them. You can literally go Google 50 ultimate list of self-directed IRA custodians. All right. So to set one of these up, you start like $500. You could do a rollover from your 401k into a traditional. If you have an existing Roth, you can roll it over and set it up there for you. Okay. Usually they want you to, if I'm correct, it may differ a little bit. They usually want you had at least 500 in there or more to do something with. And you can you can put an option on a note and sell that option on your IRA too. But anyway, so if you're going to buy an IRA, it's got to be with a third party. You got to be passive. You can't be going out and touching the asset, fixing it up. It's got to be passive. And that's great because if you're buying performing paper or sub-performing paper, stuff like that, there's a third party servicer to help handle that collections and wiring into your accounts. If you're buying a performing note, you fill out the directional investment form, all the details of the note in your self-directed IRA, because honestly, notes are the largest asset class actually held in self-directed IRAs out there. Most people don't know that. Roughly 30 to 40% of all money sitting in self-directed IRAs, though, is sitting in 0% interest-bearing accounts, waiting for a deal to happen, a deal to take place, which is just crazy. You know what I mean? But it's an opportunity for you. So if you're going to buy a note, you're just going to fill out the directional investment form, all the details of the note, who you're buying it from. Usually the self-directed IRA custodian is going to need to see a copy of the allonge, which is the transfer docs, for them to release funds to the bank. Once that's done, the seller will send over the assignment of mortgage. Of course, it's going to have to be labeled, like if you have an equity trust account, let's just say equity trust for the benefit of Chris Ward IRA, account number 1234567. Say Brian doesn't want his name to be out there, so it could be the equity trust for the benefit of account number 123456778, if you want to leave your name off. So you can buy and start collecting. The servicing companies will wire funds from the borrower wherever you want them sent to. Completely fine. Now, if we are using other people's money to buy and partner with us on stuff, we're just giving them a flat 7, 8, 9, 10% return. So they're going to sign a funding agreement. The lending agreement is a flat return. There's a couple different ways to do it, depending on how much they're investing or what they're looking to do. If they want to put a chunk of money with us, we'll then open up usually a special purpose IRA, a special purpose LLC, and have them be partners with it on that. And then that LLC is buying the notes and is funded by the IRA company. Other times, we'll have the borrowers, the funding sources be codenamed on the assignment. So the assignment mortgage date gets transferred, says 50% interest to Chris Ward IRA and 50% interest to my LLC. So there are a couple of different ways that we can structure deals. Of course, we've got a fund so people can invest in, just like going into a fund system as well too, for those out there that like to do that. So there's a couple of different ways depending on where everybody's at. And we've had people buy, notes as little as $1,500 for their eye in a small little note, or all the way upwards to $1 million. So we had in their IRA. That's a pretty good IRA account to have. You got $1 million. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So you take self-directed IRA money. I'm assuming you also take cash from investors who would want to invest with you as well. Cash is key.
Yeah, you can show up with a suitcase of cash. I'm just joking. No. Yes. I had one guy do that one time. I show up with that. I was like, dude, I can't take that. You just can't launder your money, No, but yes, it's got to be wired. So yeah, if you got checking account, savings account, some money, sitting on there, you can use line of credit. So you always want to know what that line of credit is going to cost you, so that you're making sure that you're getting. We had one lady, oh God, said she was going to use cash. She was going to fund $70,000 to buy 2 notes, to fund 2 note deals in Florida. And I asked her where the money was coming from. She goes, "Oh, it's coming from cash." I'm like, okay, great. So we set it all up with her. And I said, "This is a Florida deal. It's going to take a year to foreclose because they're not paying. Here's all the agreements." She's like, yeah, I'm fine with that. And she'd taken my classes and been in other real estate. Well, 6 months into it, she calls me up and says, hey, I need my money back. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, the interest payment on my credit cards where the money came from is causing me to lose it. Like, what? Are you an idiot? You pulled cash off your stupid credit cards at 19%? Yeah, I'm like, nah, I mean, like, you're signing an agreement, and I can try to work with you on that and try to get it refinanced out or put somebody else, but it's going to take, oh, no. So always ask where the money is coming from because you'll have people that are stupid out there, and it just isn't any niche out there. But anyway, good times. Good times.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you've shared some incredible stuff. Where do you see We Close Notes going in the future, and how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in investing, if they're interested in taking your course, if they're interested in learning more about what you do? I think you shared a lot of really quality content today.
Yeah, it's real easy. Just go to weclosenotes.com. That's my main website with our podcast classes. Check out we've got the #1 podcast coming up on our 1000th episode here in the next week or two, the Note Closer Show.
Congrats.
Thank you. A lot of work, man. You know how it's a lot of work. You know what I mean?
There's a lot going into every one.
Yes, there is. A lot of love. But weclosenotes.com, we've got a free class that we teach once a month there, too. If you go to Note Weekend, you can sign up for a intro class at no additional cost, but that's always the best way. But before you do anything, what you guys need to do there listening to the show is make sure you go over and hit that subscribe button and make sure you leave a 5-star review for Brian and Chris, because we as podcasters, not only do we love to hear from our listeners, but we love to see, hey, that you're actually listening and we're not just talking out into the void. You know what I mean? So do that. But yeah, check it out. weclosenotes.com. Easy way to get a hold of me. I'm really the only Scott Carson, the note guy out there. Actually, Chris Ward, you being from England, are you a fan of football, the true football?
I am a fan of the true football, but there is a Scott Carson, and he played for teams that I hate.
Okay, so
You, on the other hand, Scott, with your crystal ball, you've been okay so far. Better than that, Scott Carson.
yes, you got to, I think I could joke to him the gap, because he's got a big gap in the middle of his front teeth too and stuff like that. But yeah, I think he just left Manchester City or something like that too, didn't he? Or retired or got kicked to the curb because he's a backup for years. But who's your favorite team over there now that you're saying
United. So
Manchester United? Yeah. Okay, there you go.
he actually probably had, how they say the QB2 has the best role in like
Football.
NFL. He was the third string goalkeeper, so they often are just the locker room guy. Like his responsibility is just to be fun. I think
exactly
in game in like 5 years, something.
Yeah, but he still got plenty of pounds for his. That's, and then I guess he won as a backup for Manchester City, something like that. Or we won't name that. We won't name that soccer team the other side, right?
Yeah, the noisy neighbors, they call them.
Noisy neighbors. I love that. Exactly. Brian, you got a favorite team, buddy? Are you a big soccer fan too?
I don't follow it as closely as Chris. I know right here in MetLife, we've got the FIFA Club Championship going on. I think that started at 3 actually. So yeah, I'll follow it. But big NFL guy, so American football. So
you got to be a Cowboys fan living in New York. Then that's what you're saying to me?
Yeah, right. Unfortunately, one of our friends is, and we give him hell all the time about being a Cowboys fan living in the Northeast. Like, they haven't even won anything. So they
hadn't won anything in years. And I am a Cowboys fan. Okay? I'm a huge Cowboys. Yes, it's like somebody was talking the other day. Like, why are Eagles fans? So Eagles have actually won 2 championships in the last 20 years. Same thing with the Giants have won 2 championships, and the Cowboys are sitting around still dealing with Jerry Jones. I mean, that's a distressed asset. We should get rid of Jerry. You know what I mean?
I mean, if you keep going at the rate you're going, maybe one day you'll buy the Cowboys, and then you could.
Well, Dak keeps getting hurt. That's a distressed asset right there. I would be paying for that. I would pay a whole lot less for that distressed asset because he's a break a thumb, pull a hamstring, or fall down. Keep throwing interceptions, though. You know what I mean?
You're paying $5 million a year for that.
$55 million a year to be the other team's best player on our team.
We've just got the perfect clip to start this podcast as you just shitting on the Cowboys, and I love it.
But hey, it is what it is. I mean, that's the great thing I think about stuff, the sports and stuff like that. I've become a bigger fan of soccer recently. Some of the things that are going on, like I think Ryan Reynolds did a good job with Brexham, but then also some of these Amazon, different shows and behind the scenes or stuff like that. It's always good to see that. But man, when you think real estate investors are goofy, when you start listening to how some of these players talk or how they act, or just they're like, man, you got some crazy people out there. We're all normal then. We're pretty normal, right?
That's for
You're
sure.
absolutely right. This has been an absolute pleasure, Scott. The only good Scott Carson that I've ever heard of is you. But we really do appreciate you taking the time. It's been an incredible episode. There's a ton that people will take away from this. So everyone, do go on to weclosenotes.com. Go and take a listen. I definitely will to Scott's podcast as well. We will put everything in the show notes so that people can just click immediately on there. But thank you so much, Scott. This was amazing.
Hey, thank you guys. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you back here stateside for a pint sometime soon, hopefully, huh?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Peak Profits Podcast. We hope today's episode was not only inspiring, but packed with actionable insights for your passive real estate investments. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review. Your feedback fuels our passion to bring you even more valuable content. Stay connected with us on social media and visit 7peakcapital.com for exclusive resources and updates. Until next time, keep striving towards your financial goals and let's reach new peaks together.